Hey everybody, Jake here with ChevTec Group. Today in front of me I have a decent collection of 40 millimeter low velocity grenade launcher rounds. In today's video I'm going to go over all of these and a few more. To start off, we're going to go through the practice rounds here. All the different varieties, ones used by different countries. We'll disassemble the ones we can, show you all the different parts and how they differ. We'll also go over some less lethal options. These ones used by the military. We also have some civilian ones we'll go over. They're used by police departments and foreign nations, people like that. We'll go over a variety of signaling rounds. I definitely do not have all of them, but we will go over those. And finally, everybody's favorite, we'll go over lethal rounds, including the most popular to some of the ones reserved for special forces, guys like that. So stay tuned and hope you enjoy. Right, to start off our practice round overview, the first one I'm going to cover is the M407 practice round. Now this is almost identical, very similar to the M407 high explosive round, which is the first main issued high explosive round when they came out with the M781 grenade launcher in Vietnam. That was the main round for it. Now, of course, there was Buckshot and a bunch of others, but for practice on the home range, they came out with the M407, which had the same fuse. Oftentimes, it even had the same body to it. The main difference is instead of a high explosive charge, these are loaded with a smoke charge. They have a small amount of RDX explosive that discharges smoke pellets, makes a nice bang and smoke visual signal when it impacts. They're still available somewhat. They're really hard to find, really collectible. There are inert versions like this one. There are also versions that do not have a live fuse in them, but have a live shell. A lot of them were used as proof cartridges for new launchers. Some of those went onto the market in the last couple years. So it's hard to tell what you have. Some people disassemble them to see what they got. You can shake them. This one doesn't rattle. Usually a live fuse in there will rattle. So be careful with what you're looking for and what you buy. If you're looking for a live one, don't get stuck with an inert one or with a proof charge, which could be loaded pretty hot. Next round we're going to cover is this round right here. And to complement this, I'm going to bring in this one right here. Now, these are unknown exactly who used them, other than I can tell you this. Europe seems to have used this as their main practice round and still does. It is used in the, I believe, L8 grenade launcher by Britain. It is manufactured by a company called Rheinmetall. I think it's a German company. They manufacture a whole different line, all different kinds of high explosives, practice rounds, signaling rounds. And then this I got from Mast Technology, which is a company that makes M781 rounds, and they refer to it as the German style. The main difference you're going to see between these, besides the color, is the shell casing. This is an aluminum shell casing, very similar to like a high explosive shell casing, and this is a standard M212 casing, which tells me that the pushers might be slightly different, but either way, they both carry a smoke charge. This one labeled night practice may carry a chemical luminescent charge, like a glow stick charge, but I have not been able to get a part yet, and we'll go over that a little bit later in the line. Just to give you an idea of what makes up these German chalk practice rounds, this is the day-night round. as you can see, it looks like it's an all plastic pusher, but believe it or not, it's not. This appears to be a machined aluminum. You can see grooves from the lathe on there, machining marks, and it has an O-ring to hold it in the case. Very neat, very interesting. It also looks like the case normally has a little lip on it to hold the zinc in, and I don't know if that's machined down or maybe it just forms out, but otherwise it's a standard M212 case with a M9 powder 38 short blank in there. Very neat. From pictures I've seen, this blue part screws off, and that's like a capsule filled with chalk. I'll see if I can get a picture to post up in this video, and that'll give you a little more of an idea. Very cool rounds. Now, here's the one everybody knows. This is the standard M781 practice round used by the U.S. military and many other militaries. We've gone over the construction of it in a different video. You have your M212 cartridge case, your 38 short blank with a burst disc and load with M9 flake propellant that goes in the base of that. You have your zinc pusher, and then you have your windscreen, your nose cone that's filled with an orange float chalk. The float chalk is really airy, lightweight, tends to puff up in the air. That's why soldiers lovingly call it the Cheeto round, especially when it explodes in the barrel and covers you in orange powder chalk. Like I said, used by many countries. Very easy to reload. If you'll watch my other video, my most popular video, it talks about how we 3D print parts for that. That way we don't have to worry about companies releasing parts for us to reload those rounds. This round right here, made by one of the same companies, this is the exact same thing. It is made for the Israeli army on a contract, or Israeli military. Very cool. I thought it was really neat. It has a white cone instead of blue, and the markings are different. And as far as I know, that is the only difference. Either way, awesome collectible. Love it. The last practice round we're going to talk about today is, well, here's one of them. It's basically the future of 40mm grenade launcher practice rounds. As you'll see, it's marked target practice day, night, and I believe the T is tracer, although I haven't figured that out yet, if all of them are tracer or not. But this one is essentially a test version or a prototype, and the reason they're going to these is because before, if you wanted to practice at night, you had to use something like live high explosive rounds, and that brings in a whole different set of trouble. You can't shoot some high explosive rounds at a building that you want to go invade later for training, mainly because, well, first of all, it could damage your structure, and second of all, if there's any duds, which there is a percent of high explosive grenades that do not detonate and are duds, then you can't have your troops moving onto that building with unexploded ordnance laying around in a training environment. Not safe, not a good idea. So if you've seen any of my night vision 40mm videos, this might seem a little bit familiar to you. Now, essentially, they're calling these M781 E1 rounds, and I'm not sure of the final version. There were a few companies bidding with different designs. One of them was very similar to this, that had a basically a glow stick element in it. Same with this one here, and I'm going to actually disassemble this one because this one's rather unique. Rather than just having a glow stick pellet, this one's a little more complicated, and it's why it was a little more expensive. But you have your typical plastic, probably nylon nose cone, a little bit different shape, more closely resembles the high explosive rounds like a M433. And then inside, surround it, you have a glass capsule with a plastic divider. It's got a rubber seal on the bottom, and then the whole thing actually threads into the zinc pusher. So there's a bit more machining involved in making the pusher, or at least a radically different mold. I imagine that had to be threaded. It definitely has machining marks in there. Then this feels like an aluminum little base here, and this is your glowing element. I imagine I'd have a two-part, like a Siloom glow stick, you know, that you find at the hardware store or whatever, or your kids use at the skating rink, you know. But that gives you your night portion of this round. So not only do you have chalk inside the nose cone, outside the glass for daytime, but then you have a glow element for nighttime. And I've replicated that in my other videos. Best seen under night vision. You can see it a little bit without, but it's pretty neat. And that is the future of the practice round. The future of the M781, definitely. Will they keep the old one around just for units that don't operate at night? Possibly. I know they're still producing them, but a version of this, I mean, I've even seen versions that look exactly like this, maybe a slight different cone shape to them, and then they basically have a fat short glow stick in them, and that's the basics of it. So that wraps up our practice ammo. Of course, live HE ammo can be used for practice. If you've ever been in the military and you get issued that overseas, you're definitely going to practice with some HE rounds before you get over there. So let's go over some illumination and signaling rounds. All of these here are considered flare rounds. The kind I don't have to show off right now are smoke rounds. Just for a quick preview, smoke rounds usually look somewhat similar to, I guess more similar to an M406, M407 round. You won't see a crimp here. It'll be a one solid projectile, and they're colored on top to give you the color of the smoke. I was issued some in Afghanistan, and they still are used mainly for marking targets, but very limited use. So we'll move into illumination rounds. This is your standard, most popular White Star parachute round. You aim straight up in the air or on a slight angle and fire this off. It's a aluminum body, and the pusher's attached. Has a timed fuse that when it reaches apogee, it'll pop this cap off. You can see it's labeled W for White Star parachute. This thing burns wicked bright. It'll light up a whole valley, a whole field, illuminating you and everybody around you, and hopefully the enemy too. Awesome round. Getting harder to find, but very cool. This is similar. This is a red star parachute. Has an R on top for red. The reason these are not lettered like this is so when you're reaching around your ammo pouch or on your bandolier, and you can feel what you're grabbing, even in the dark or under night vision. So it's something pretty cool. But this is the same thing as the White Star, just it burns red. Up next, we're going to go over the infrared. Very hard to find. If you do want one of these in your collection, Grog makes inert ones. If you look around online, you can order up a inert one, I don't know, 50, 60 bucks. He makes awesome reproductions. Has an eye on top for infrared. And this burns if you're looking at it with your naked eye, you see a dim glowing star in the sky. Now under night vision, it's the sun. It just lights up the sky. If it's a cloudy day, no moon, and your night vision struggling, and you pop one of these in the air, you're not going to have any issues at all. Very cool round. They make one You'll see these in two different versions. There's one, instead of M992, it'll say Oracle, and that is just a like a police version of the same round. All those are aluminum bodied, very similar construction in all of them. Now this here is a white star cluster round. First thing you'll notice is that there's no taper on the body, and that's because this round's made out of a fiberboard cardboard material with an aluminum or zinc pusher. I believe it's aluminum. And then on top, another plastic white top. Let me get that in focus. And it has these dimples on it, or I guess little nubs on it, and that's to let you know white and then star cluster. What this does is it goes up a lot like just a firework, goes up, pops, and shoots some white stars out. Pretty neat. Great for signaling. You know, you got a helicopter coming in and they're wondering where you're at night. You pop one of these up and they're going to see it for miles and miles. Could also burn somebody's house down with it pretty easy because they burn hot. So those are your main signal rounds. There are others. There's green. They all come in different colors. There's also smoke rounds that look very similar to this. It's a more like a high capacity smoke. You could use it for screening your position, or things like that. Many different companies are making signal rounds and smoke rounds, illumination rounds, everywhere from old, ex-Soviet countries, European countries, America, even in the U.S. There's multiple companies making ammo for these grenade launchers. These are U.S. military rounds. They're the ones that you'll find most often in the U.S. for sale. So that's all for the illumination rounds. Hopefully I'll have some smoke rounds to show off in the future. Just some inert ones. Maybe I'll order some up. Like I said, Grog makes awesome reproductions. The M1006 40 millimeter, referred to as a non-lethal cartridge by the military. Most people would say less lethal because these rounds can kill you. This is a factory cartridge. Looks like it takes a standard M212 nylon casing, which it can, but from the factory they come with an aluminum bushing installed. And not only does that extend the life, it looks like it makes the vent hole a little bit smaller. I'm not 100% sure of the purpose of that, but that's how they come. I myself have been reloading them into these aluminum exact impact cases by ChevTec Defense Technology. It seems to be working pretty well. I just worked up loads for that. Topic of a future video. The projectile is made up of the front, which feels like a rubber coated piece of foam, and then the black part is some kind of very lightweight plastic. Now you'll see that it's hollow on the inside, and what that essentially does is doubles the expansion chamber of the case. So when you put it together, instead of the expansion chamber coming to here, it comes all the way up to here. So that lowers the velocity a bit. They also use about a third of the standard powder compared to a chalk round. As you'll see, it says non-lethal on there. Kind of a misnomer. Meant to be non-lethal, but I guarantee you people have been killed by these. Now those are great for taking down one guy. Right here we have the M1029. M1029, non-lethal crowd dispersal round, better referred to as rubber buckshot. This is a solid aluminum case, very thick walls. This one's actually been fired, and I reloaded it with a 3D printed wad. Topic of a future video, but it takes a crimped 38 blank, not the standard we usually see in the other rounds that has the burst disc. This has a star crimp on it, a fiberboard wad, and a bottom wad, and usually the top is sealed with a latex paint. And this will shoot out a good amount of large rubber balls in a shotgun blast, just to make everybody know that you don't want them around anymore. It says non-lethal. Once again, close enough in the right spot, this could definitely kill a person. So not something to play around with, but fun for the backyard. And the sponge round used by the military. The one I did not mention is the tear gas. The military has its own model designation of tear gas. I'll throw up a couple pictures right now. And then to complement the military's riot, less lethal ammo, there's also many different civilian, well, police and export munitions for the same thing. Here's what's called the exact impact round. This is made by ChevTec or Safariland Group, but this is their standard round. In essence, it's almost identical to the M1006 sponge round. The only difference is the foam feels very feels like a Nerf ball. There on the military one, there's like a latex coating over it, some kind of flexible thin rubber. But this one just feels like a sponge. Could probably absorb water, and I'm guessing that's the reason that the military ones are coated for weather resistance. And I also have the, it has a different case, but this is the extended range one. I believe it goes out to 75 meters is the max range of the extended range. So these aren't made for using at long distances. It's not a sniper rifle, it's a grenade launcher. There are civilian companies like ALS and DefTech that make rubber buckshot rounds extremely similar to the M1026. You can see the case difference, how thick that is. I love these cases. I got a whole bunch of them for dirt cheap from a guy on Arms List, believe it or not. But they're great for reloading. These, as you can see, the edges are a little dent up. They aren't as durable, but they're still great for reloading. I wouldn't mind having more of these. Just have this one I found at the range, actually in a burn barrel. But and then as well, CS, OC, all sorts of tear gas, and eye burning agents made by plenty of different companies. It'd be impossible for me to collect or even find pictures of every non-lethal round out there. There's way too many companies making them. There's multiple companies making this exact round here. Just, it's all over the map. But this is a good representation and a good idea of what you can find if you own one. I have over 100 of these projectiles I got trading with the guy. They're out there. They show up on Gunbroker. And they're reusable for the most part. And that wraps up the less lethal that I have to show you guys. And now we're at everybody's favorite, the lethal rounds. There's basically two kinds of lethal rounds. You have your close range direct fire types, and then your explosive rounds. Starting off right here, I went over this round before, but this is a good representation of the M407 high explosive grenade. Has a fragmentation ball on the inside, point detonating fuse. When it hits, shoots frag out everywhere. A real M406 typically has a more gold color ogive on the top, the cone. So that's how you'll know it right away. These were pretty much the original issue ammo for M79s in Vietnam. The ammo carried most and used most, along with the others like Buckshot and stuff like that. Now, there were quite a few variations of high explosive grenades between the M407 and the M433. Some were made for snow, where when they impacted, they'd bounce back up and then explode. That because they noticed in deep snow, a lot of times the snow would soften the explosion and catch a lot of the fragmentation, slow it down. So there were also some air bursting types. They're still working on developing air bursting types that have a radar in the fuse and detonates it before it hits the ground, rather than, there's also some other fancy ones out there, but that's topic of a later video. Here is the standard issue high explosive grenade of the U.S. military for 40 millimeter. The grenade is made up of a spin-armed setback safety fuse right here, the M550. It's considered a spitback fuse, and the reason for that is it's not just a high explosive grenade, it's considered a high explosive dual purpose grenade. As you'll see, the detonator right here is slightly domed, kind of like a little shape charge, and that spits back the flame through the hole in the shape charge. So the base of this grenade is made up of a fragmentation matrix pressed into the grenade body, and then the shape charge sits on top. You see that hole for the detonating charge. You go back and it detonates the grenade from the back. This allows this to be formed into a molten jet of hot metal and pierce your tank hulls or your armored positions. It'll go through a good amount of steel. And that is the basics of the M433. Most high explosive grenades nowadays use the M550 Fuse. Like I said, they're working on a proximity version, but just so you can see some of the parts, these little weighted anvils, they spin out to the side when the grenade's launched due to the rifling of the barrel. You'll see here's the actual, let's see if I can get it to focus. Here's the actual little firing pin stab detonator that stabs into the, I believe it's an M55 detonator. And then inside here is the arming mechanism, and you'll see that bigger hole there. That's where the detonator sits, and as this grenade spins, this safety gets pushed back, and the spinning motion of the grenade along with these anvil weights will move that detonator into position with the firing pin. Pretty neat. There's also a setback device in here so that it does not, if you roll it around on the ground, it's not going to arm. It has to feel the effective launch to start the timer. And there you'll see that just fits into the base of the fuse there. Pretty cool. Love looking at this stuff. I got a couple of these and very neat. Next up, this is kind of a little more rare. You'll see on the battlefield. I've seen these in use in Syria, and they're pretty cool. This is what's considered a Hellhound grenade. If you ever watched Future Weapons, 10, 15 years ago with Mac, rest in peace. But he fired some of these for that show, and they are awesome. So the projectile is basically all aluminum. Its fragmentation pattern is machined on the outside here. It comes in just high explosive or dual purpose variants that have the shape charge inside. Just a solid aluminum base, nothing fancy there. But the Hellhound grenades carry twice the explosives amount of the M433. So pretty cool. They also fit in a M203 just fine. Barely, but they fit just fine. Very cool. The cases are a little bit different, just in how the launching charge comes out of the little high pressure chamber. It's one big hole on top. I got a picture from Syria I'll post right now. And on the M433 and prior grenades, it's cold out now, nothing wants to come apart. You'll see you can't see the vent holes because they're located around the bottom. And what that does is it vents the hot gases sideways and not into the base of the projectile, which could cause you an unhappy time. So it's a little bit more gentler of a launch. Now with the Hellhound, it's got a thick aluminum base, so it can withstand that pressure a lot better. Also, the Hellhound does not go into the case very much, whereas the M433 goes down almost to that high pressure chamber. Quite a bit difference, so that extra space gives you a lot more, or it allows the pressure to drop a lot more. So that's my collection of high explosive grenades. Now the other version of anti-personnel lethal ammo for the 40mm grenade launchers are kind of sub-caliber adapters. There is the Buckshot that is not used anymore. It wasn't found to be that effective in combat. It was kind of like a hastily put together thing. So these were found to be a lot easier to make and just as effective or more effective. This right here is a 20 gauge adapter. The 20 gauge shell just drops right in. There's a few people making these in different shapes and versions. The one I like the most is made by Scott Pace. It's a little more expensive. He has a 12 gauge adapter, but this is one of his other shells. It's this length, so you get a little more velocity out of the out of your 12 gauge round, and it also has some scoops on the bottom to be able to extract the spent shell. It has an O-ring to keep the shell from just sliding in and out. Like this, you can't really keep it loaded in your pouch because it just slides out. Well, Scott's has a nice O-ring in there to hold it in place, just enough. Now this here's his cannon round. I went over this in a short other video, but it's basically a 4 gauge shotgun shell. Here's the size of the wad. You can see that 20 gauge shell fits in there just fine. But these are machined Delrin rods. As I said, I'm working on 3D printing a successful version of these. But these are awesome rounds. You can load them with buckshot, flechettes, pretty much anything. I even worked with a guy to load fireworks grade smoke bombs in there, just for the heck of it. Now Scott's website is right there on the bottom. He makes awesome stuff for 40mm. He has an adapter that shoots four 10 gauge shotgun shells all at once. He has one that's called the 550. He also makes the 22 caliber Beehive rounds, which I don't have yet, but I hope to soon. Awesome stuff, you know, very good. He also makes a reloadable smoke projectile. Loads in a standard nylon case. He also makes his own cases that are super easy to reload and will last forever. So check out his website if you're looking for some readily available stuff that will last a lifetime. And that wraps up my video. That's all my high explosive and lethal stuff. You've pretty much seen everything I have at the moment, not including the stuff I make. That'll be a subject of another video, but I wanted to go over most of what the military's using, and I threw in a few extras. So I hope you liked the video. If you did, like, subscribe, share it with your friends. I know this isn't my most exciting video, but I figured it's content that needs to get out there. When I was researching all this stuff, I'd love to find more out. If you want to know more about specific rounds, say the M433, I can do a video on that. Just a nice short video on how everything works from the case all the way up. Like I said, if you liked it, hit the like button, subscribe, get my videos out there, and I'll get you more videos very soon. Have a good one.